Good news that they're now President and Secretary of State. It could have been the opposite. He could have been Secretary. She could have been President. And what became apparent during the campaign was Hillary and Barack had become the conduits to which the transformation, redemptive, maturing process was taking place. We would not have known it had they not tried for the breakthrough. And people were ready, and therefore we accept the progress. But it's been a great risk for the right to vote. Viola Luizzo, Italian-American mother, was called nigger lover. Her brains were blown out point blank range. Serena Goodman Turner, 2 Jews and a black were killed about the right to vote. Meg Evers was killed about the right to vote. Dr. King killed in part because he said we should not be at war in Vietnam. And yet the blood of those martyrs has fertilized the soil that we now operate from. I've been asked often, why was I crying the night of the election? One, because it was a joyous moment. It was like a big moment. But in that same park, 40 years ago, in '68, we were demonstrating to end the war in Vietnam. We were being beat by police and tear gassed by the police and jailed, saying, end the war in Vietnam. Now, on that night, the police in the same park were all jammed up and down, embracing an African-American president whose campaign was end the war in Iraq. We've gone from glorifying a war in Vietnam to saying this preemptive invasion, occupation does not make sense to us. We are better than that now. We grew from our reaction to the Vietnam War as a test of our patriotism to the war in Iraq as a test of our intelligence. And we determined that this did not make sense to us. So one finally sees that growth taking place. And so it was a joy of that moment, but then it was also the journey, because getting there was a difficult struggle. And getting to the next stage would be a difficult struggle. But I have no doubt that we will make our world better. We will not have war in Southeast Asia. Again, we'll have trading partners. We have the capacity, technologically, to wipe out hunger without wiping out the hungry, to create for all people drinkable water and affordable health care. And that, to be worthy of our time, we must do that. Thank you guys very much. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
So on behalf of the NIST International School of Thailand and the audience today, I would like to say thank you to Reverend Jackson for being here today and giving us this talk. As a history student, it is an honor to be in the presence of someone who has been in the events that I've studied and read about. I was particularly moved by the Reverend's points about what our generation must do, about hope over dope. The points that he made us repeat will always stay with me forever. And I believe it really brings home the points about choice and about dreaming beyond our predicament, that as the generation of today, the generation of right now, we must strive to do. And here we have an example of someone who has really made a difference in the world we live in today. So thank you.
Since you raised that, I know this may not be as applicable to you, but I often ask these questions to our youth at home. How many of you know somebody in your age group who is dead because of drugs? Stan. You know somebody who's dead because of drugs. You know somebody who's dead because of drugs. Be seated. You know someone who is in jail because of drugs, Stan. You know somebody who's in jail because of drugs in your age group. Be seated. You know someone who has tried drugs at your school. Someone who has tried drugs. You know somebody who has brought a gun or a knife to school, Stan. You know somebody who's brought a gun and a knife to school, stand. Be seated. You know somebody in your age group who has considered committing suicide, stand. There's such a correlation between the access and surrender to drugs and death, drugs and jail, guns and suicide, guns and massacre, and then in the end, give up because suicide and homicide are Siamese twins. Those are willing to die, willing to take people with them. And that's why you're challenged. You know, it's almost, I'm sure there are some teachers here who are surprised at the response, right? Say amen, teachers. But that's what we really are, and you must not surrender to the demons of drugs and violence. You must give peace within your own soul a chance. I got to go now, guys.